Welcome in. It's great to have you with us today.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
If you're listening to this right now, you are probably what we like to call the learner.
Exactly.
You're that person constantly looking for the next mental upgrade or a fresh perspective to help you navigate a very busy life.
Right. You want the deep, actionable insights.
Yeah, but you don't want to drown in academic jargon or information overload. And that is the exact mission of our deep dive today.
It really is.
We are taking a fascinating source. It's a transcript from a YouTube presentation by Joel Osteen titled Dealing with Difficult People.
A very relatable topic for, everyone.
Definitely. And we are going to extract the core psychological mechanics embedded inside it.
It's a subject that really demands a sophisticated approach, mainly because we all face this universal friction.
Oh, yeah. Every single day.
Right. You encounter it with the coworker who subtly undermines your projects, or the neighbor who operates with a baseline of hostility.
Or the relative who seems biologically programmed to drain your battery.
Yes, the draining relatives, we all have them.
We do.
What we want to do today is move past the standard surface-level advice of simply, taking a deep breath.
Which never really works anyway.
It doesn't. We are going to analyze the actual mechanics of emotional energy, the psychology of projection, and the specific cognitive frameworks you can deploy when you are confronted with conflict.
Okay, let's unpack this. The foundational premise of the source material is that emotional energy functions as an economy.
An economy.
Yeah. It is a finite resource. You wake up every single morning with a strict budget of mental and emotional bandwidth, and it's not an unlimited supply.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, viewing your emotional energy as a daily allowance completely alters how you assess your interactions.
It changes everything.
It does. Think of it in terms of actual currency. Every time you allow yourself to ruminate on an insult, or every time you spend an hour mentally drafting a rebuttal to a passive-aggressive email.
Oh, I am so guilty of the mental email drafts.
We all are. Or venting to a friend, trying to analyze why a specific person is so irritating. When you do that, you are actively spending your daily capital.
You're just draining the account.
Exactly. The critical insight here is the opportunity cost. You are spending the exact cognitive fuel required to execute your own long-term goals, to innovate at work, or to simply be present and engaged with your family in the evening.
Because there's nothing left in the tank.
Precisely.
The source makes a fascinating point about the locus of control in these situations, too. You cannot control the external triggers. You can't engineer a world where the guy in traffic doesn't cut you off, or where your crazy uncle suddenly develops emotional intelligence.
That's just not going to happen.
Right. But the text references a directive from Jesus. Stop allowing yourself to get upset.
That word allowing is huge.
It is the operational word. It frames getting offended not as an involuntary reflex, but as a transaction. You have to actively grant someone permission to access your emotional reserves.
That transactional view is central to the psychology of projection, which the text highlights quite effectively.
Let's get into that.
Let's analyze the mind of the consistently difficult person. The source points out that individuals who are perpetually rude, disrespectful, or hypercritical are almost always wrestling with their own unresolved internal chaos.
So it's not actually about you.
Not at all. They are carrying a heavy load of insecurity, bitterness, or frustration. When they lash out, they are projecting.
They're just throwing it outwards.
Exactly. They are attempting to offload their internal friction, or as the text describes it, their poison, onto a convenient target, which happens to be you.
But let's be realistic for a second. It's easy to say, just realize they are projecting. But when a coworker publicly takes credit for your project or openly insults your intelligence, doesn't ignoring it just make you a doormat?
That's a very common pushback.
How does the source differentiate between keeping your peace and simply abandoning your boundaries?
That is the vital distinction to make. Retaining your peace does not mean surrendering your boundaries.
Okay, how so?
You can send the firm correction email to your team, or you can state clearly that a certain behavior is unacceptable, but you do it without the cortisol spike.
Without the physical reaction.
Right. You do it without absorbing their chaos into your own nervous system. When you recognize that their hostility is a mechanism for their own internal struggles, it stops being a threat to your identity.
Ah, I see.
You address the logistical boundary without engaging in the emotional transaction.
The source uses an interesting biological metaphor here to illustrate that exact dynamic of avoiding the emotional transaction.
The avian analogy.
Yes, it compares human behavior to eagles, specifically referencing the book of Isaiah and the imagery of mounting up with wings like an eagle.
Right.
The eagle is an apex predator that operates at incredible altitudes, capable of flying at 30,000 feet, right up with the big jets.
That's incredibly high.
It is, and it utilizes thermal currents to glide with minimal effort.
The altitude is the key variable in the metaphor. The dynamic becomes highly instructive when the source introduces the natural nuisance to the eagle, the crow.
The crow. Now, the crow is significantly smaller, but it is highly agile and maneuverable.
Very persistent, too.
According to the analogy, a crow will occasionally harass an eagle. It will fly up behind it, pestering it, dive-bombing it, essentially doing everything it can to be a massive distraction.
Just a pest.
Yeah. Now, our default human instinct in a similar scenario is to rely on brute force. The ego says, I am the eagle, I am bigger, I am stronger, and I am going to turn around and destroy this crow to prove a point.
Which is the exact cognitive trap we fall into when we engage in a heated debate with an anonymous internet troll.
Oh, absolutely.
Or when we drop everything to trade petty insults with a highly reactive person.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The eagle doesn't do that.
No.
No. The eagle does not expend its finite energy reserves trying to outmaneuver or swat at the crow. Instead, the eagle simply changes its environment.
It just alters the terms of engagement.
Exactly. It locks its wings and begins to climb higher into the thermals. Because crows have a much lower physiological ceiling for altitude, as the air gets thinner, the crow physically cannot survive the ascent.
Wow.
Eventually, it just falls away, gasping for air, while the eagle continues its flight path undisturbed.
In cognitive terms, this means shifting your perspective from the immediate emotional trigger to your macro-level objective.
Rising above it.
Literally. In your life, there will always be crows. The source actually throws in chickens and turkeys, too, to represent individuals who thrive on low-level gossip, petty grievances, and noise.
The office turkeys.
Exactly. If you descend to their level to debate the turkeys or try to out-squawk the crows, you are validating their behavior and squandering your own altitude.
You're burning your own fuel.
You outclimb the distraction by focusing so intensely on the bigger picture of your day, your career, or your life that the low-level noise simply cannot follow you up.
That concept of outclimbing the noise translates well into another framework the source provides for very mundane, on-the-ground situations.
Let's hear it.
It introduces the concept of becoming like a Teflon pan.
A Teflon pan.
Yeah. The text points to Psalm 45, mentioning being anointed with the oil of joy.
Okay.
Translated into modern behavioral terms, applying that oil means consciously cultivating a no-stick cognitive surface. When disrespect, passive-aggressive comments, or outright hostility are thrown at you, they just don't adhere to your spirit.
It is the practice of emotional impermeability. The source offers two highly practical, everyday examples of this Teflon mindset in action.
Yes, the real-world scenarios.
Both instances require the individual to recognize the bait and actively choose not to bite.
The first scenario is a personal anecdote from the speaker's time working in television production.
Yeah, he was behind the scenes, right?
Yeah. He visits a local electronics store to purchase a specific part he buys regularly. He approaches the counter, but the clerk is on a personal phone call and actively ignores him for 15 minutes.
15 minutes is a long time to stand there.
It's infuriating. Finally, the clerk hangs up, offers zero apologies, and aggressively barks, "What do you need?"
We have all met this guy.
We really have.
Mm-hmm.
He usually works at the DMV, but apparently he moonlights at local electronics stores.
A textbook encounter with a crow. The clerk is initiating a conflict to offload his own frustration.
So the speaker requests the part, and the clerk immediately snaps, claiming they don't carry it and never have.
Even though he buys it there all the time.
Exactly. When the speaker politely mentions he purchases it there all the time, the clerk escalates. The text says his face turns red, there's practically smoke coming out of his ears, he starts using profanity, and he loudly demands the speaker never ask for it again.
Unbelievable.
The speaker notes that his immediate visceral instinct was retaliation. His ego wanted to assert dominance, maybe threaten to call the manager or verbally put the clerk in his place.
The desire to balance the scales in that moment is a deeply ingrained evolutionary response. Our brains are wired to protect our social standing.
But the speaker pauses. He runs the cost-benefit analysis on his daily emotional budget. Is he going to allow this random clerk's poison to infect the rest of his day?
Right.
Instead of taking the bait, he deploys the Teflon mindset. He simply smiles, says, "Have a nice day," and walks out the door. The hostility slid right off the surface.
That decision pairs perfectly with the second anecdote the source provides.
Oh, the newsstand story.
Yes. Two friends are walking down the street and stop at a small newsstand to buy a paper. The clerk running the stand is remarkably sour, cold, and inconsiderate.
Just giving them nothing.
Nothing. Despite this, the man buying the paper completes the transaction with a warm smile and says, "I hope you have a great day."
Classic Teflon.
As they walk away, his friend is bewildered and asks if the clerk is always that miserable. The man confirms, yes, every morning.
Wow, every morning.
The friend then asks if the man is always that polite in return, to which he again answers, yes, every morning.
I love that consistency.
When the friend asks why he would bother being kind to someone so deeply unpleasant, the man delivers a masterclass in cognitive framing. He says, "I've made up my mind. I'm not going to let one person ruin my day."
I've made up my mind. That phrasing implies a preloaded defense mechanism.
Exactly.
It's not a reaction in the moment. It is a predetermined strategy before the friction even occurs.
What's fascinating here is the psychological strategy of pre-commitment. True autonomy, according to the underlying philosophy of this source, is not achieved by attempting to control the external environment or avoiding difficult people altogether.
Because that's impossible.
It's a completely impossible standard. Autonomy is achieved by refusing to hand over the remote control of your internal state.
The remote control.
Yes, when you react with anger to the rude newsstand clerk, you have literally handed a stranger the remote control to your mood and your nervous system. The Teflon mindset is the active choice to keep the remote control firmly in your own pocket.
That newsstand story proves you can keep your peace in the small daily frictions. But what happens when the stakes are significantly higher?
When it's not just a stranger.
Right. When the difficult person is someone actively impacting your livelihood or your future. The source transitions into a historical case study from the book of 1 Samuel, chapter 25, to illustrate this higher stakes dynamic.
This is a great example.
It involves David, a wealthy landowner named Nabal, and Nabal's wife, Abigail.
This narrative serves as an excellent stress test for the frameworks we've been discussing.
Let's look at the setup. David, who is documented as the future king of Israel, is currently displaced and living in the countryside with his men.
They're essentially on the run.
They are camped near Carmel, which is the territory of Nabal. Nabal is exceedingly wealthy, possessing thousands of sheep and goats, but the text makes a point to describe his character. He is harsh, stubborn, mean-spirited, and notoriously difficult to deal with.
A very high-level, difficult person.
A megacrow. David and his men have been acting as a de facto security force, protecting Nabal's vast flocks from regional threats.
Doing him a huge favor.
A massive favor. When harvest time arrives, David sends messengers to Nabal with a highly respectful request, asking if Nabal might share some provisions with his men in recognition of the protection they provided.
In the context of the era, this was standard protocol. It was a reasonable expectation of reciprocity.
Nabal's response, however, is pure vitriol. He not only refuses, but openly insults David's lineage and status. He basically asks, "Who is this man, David? Why should I give my hard-earned resources to a runaway?"
Ouch.
Yeah. When this message gets back to David, the Teflon mindset vanishes completely. His ego takes the steering wheel.
The remote control is handed over.
Handed right over. He immediately gets furious, packs his gear, orders hundreds of his men to arm themselves, and vows to march down to the estate and kill Nabal and his entire household.
David takes the bait entirely. He is a high-altitude eagle, choosing to dive down into the dirt to fight a crow who insulted him.
That's a great way to put it. He is about to spend an enormous amount of capital and potentially compromise his entire future destiny over a bruised ego.
This is where Abigail, Nabal's wise wife, enters the narrative to perform what might be the most effective historical de-escalation on record.
She is brilliant in this story.
She intercepts David on the road before the violence can begin, bringing a massive supply of provisions. Bread, wine, cakes. But her tactical brilliance is in her dialogue. She immediately neutralizes David's anger by validating his perspective. She acknowledges that her husband is, in fact, a fool.
She aligns herself with his reality before trying to change his mind. That is a core tenet of modern conflict resolution.
Exactly. Once she has his attention, she pivots to the macro-level objective. She reminds David of his ultimate trajectory. She asks, "You are called to be the king of Israel. Why would you even fight with this fool? Do not let this needless battle be a blemish on your record."
A brilliant reframing. So, what does this all mean? How does a geopolitical conflict from antiquity map onto your life as a listener today? The source distills it into a defining analytical question. Is the difficult person you are dealing with right now actually standing between you and your destiny? Or are they merely a distraction baiting your ego?
Right. Is the colleague who made a snide comment capable of stopping your ultimate career trajectory?
No, they're just a distraction.
It is the critical distinction between a true obstacle and a mere nuisance. The source concludes this historical analysis by examining the concept of ultimate vindication.
Because David backed down.
He did. Because David listened to Abigail, he retained his altitude. He accepted the provisions and walked away without engaging in the fight. The text notes that roughly 10 days later, Nabal suffered a stroke and died. And David eventually married Abigail.
The universe handled it.
Exactly. The broader mechanism the text highlights is that when you relinquish the desperate need to personally exact revenge or balance the scales, you find vindication. The source actually offers another, slightly more intense textual example of this mechanism at play.
Oh, right, the bears.
Yes, the bears. It's quite an extreme image. It references the prophet Elisha, who was traveling when a large group of young men, 42 boys to be exact, emerged and began relentlessly mocking him.
Just harassing him on the road.
Right. They were specifically targeting his physical appearance, calling him baldy repeatedly.
Another flock of crows.
Exactly. Now, Elisha, who possessed significant authority, could have easily initiated a conflict, but he opted for the high road. He chose to stay in peace and ignored the taunts.
And then...
The text then casually notes that 2 bears came out of the woods and mauled the antagonists.
Which is wild. Obviously, we aren't suggesting you wait for wild animals to solve your corporate HR disputes or deal with your difficult neighbor.
No, please don't do that.
But the extreme nature of the story highlights the framework clearly. If you take the high road, vindication comes.
Precisely. If we extract the meta lesson from the historical specifics, the framework is about radical detachment from the outcome.
Refusing to fight petty battles.
Yes. The deeply human urge to prove you are right, to have the last word, or to ensure the other person suffers for their disrespect is an exhausting, losing game. The strategy presented is to maintain your altitude, protect your daily energy budget, and trust that the universe, or God, as the text frames it, will manage the accounting and handle your vindication.
Your primary directive is simply to keep flying.
Just keep flying.
This has been a remarkably dense and practical deep dive. Let's summarize the absolute crucial insights for you to carry forward today.
The key takeaways.
First, reframe your emotional energy as a finite daily budget. Refuse to spend it on interactions that offer zero return. Second, identify the crows in your environment. Do not drop your altitude to fight them at their level. Outclimb the distraction.
Rise above.
Third, proactively apply the Teflon no-stick mindset. Decide before you leave your house that you retain the remote control to your own mood. And finally, always ask the diagnostic question. Is this person a barrier to my destiny or just a distraction?
This raises an important question for you to analyze in your own life today. Look at the current interpersonal frictions you're experiencing. How much time are you wasting offended?
A great question.
How much of your finite cognitive bandwidth are you freely handing over to people who have no actual bearing on your long-term success? The strategic imperative is to make up your mind today to take control of your own happiness. Recognize that while you cannot dictate the behavior of a difficult person, their ability to drain your energy is entirely dependent on your permission.
So revoke that permission.
Exactly.
And as we sign off, I want to leave you with a final lingering thought. We dedicate a tremendous amount of time trying to figure out how to shield ourselves from difficult people.
We really do.
But what if we completely shifted our perspective entirely? What if the next incredibly rude, difficult, or draining person you encounter isn't actually a hurdle at all?
What else would they be?
What if they are a specifically designed training rate placed directly in your path just to help you practice your ability to fly at a higher altitude?
Oh, wow.
Because biologically speaking, without the resistance of gravity, the eagle's wings have no power to lift.
That is a profound reframing of the friction we all face.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you walk away equipped to protect your energy and maintain your altitude. Keep exploring, keep learning, and we will catch you next time.